Hi there, this is Dr. Debbie, and I was just scrolling a bit through social media, which I do most days, just like you. I spend a little time on Facebook and Instagram, and I read other people's comments on other people's posts. And it actually shocks me the type of advice that women give to one another about marriage. We all have experiences in marriage that can vary. A lot of people write wonderful, inspirational books about their marriage. They're writing about their marriage, which is the point. And that's great. I love that. I love hearing about a couple who's been married 25, 30 years or more, sharing things that worked in their relationship. And those are wonderful things indeed. And I do love that. Honestly, I do. But the problem is that those are inspirational things, not necessarily instructional things. Sometimes what works in one marriage may not work in someone else's. You've got a sample of one to draw from, so it's pretty dangerous to draw conclusions that you could apply to every couple when you look at just one marriage. Consequently, I encourage you to look at a broad range of advice, remembering that it's likely inspirational, maybe even aspirational, but certainly not intended to be instructional. You need to learn from someone who has studied couples in particular. If you're going to apply something to everyone, the person who is telling you this stuff needs to have a much broader database than just one couple. That is, someone who has a really clear picture of what a healthy marriage should look like. Someone can help you understand what it takes to create that marriage, not just for the one couple, but for every couple. Of course, there will be some individual differences, so whomever you're listening to needs to be able to acknowledge the fact that we don't all start from the same place. We're starting from lots of different places. Another thing is even more dangerous than inspirational and aspirational books, or even instructional books that are not broad enough in terms of what they teach. That more dangerous thing? What we say to each other as friendly advice. Not long ago, I spoke with a good friend who was struggling with some advice she'd gotten a few years back from some really well-meaning friends about her marriage. She took their advice because she thought they knew what they were talking about. She trusted what they said. And taking their heavy-handed advice didn't turn out well for her. Her marriage was ruined because she followed their advice and left her husband. Now, these women meant well, but they didn't really know or understand the situation my friend and her husband were in. They needed to find an effective counselor. Instead, she found an effective lawyer, which is most unfortunate because my friend, years later, realized her husband had been depressed. One final thing I want to share with you about advice is the advice that comes from counselors themselves. Many counselors believe they can only work with a couple. If both people, or even just one of the people, needs some extra help, they need to find a separate therapist. In other words, the husband should get his own therapist and the wife should get her own therapist. Now, in my experience as a couples counselor, that can be good or it can be very damaging. First, that means 3 paid sessions a week working in therapy with 3 different people that are going to give you 3 different perspectives. His therapist is going to empathize with where he is and make suggestions or guide him in a direction that is probably the opposite of what her therapist is saying. When you're consulting with someone about a relationship, it's probably a good idea for that person to meet and get to know who you're talking about. Otherwise, how could they truly understand what's really going on? When I worked with couples and realized each one needed a bit of extra help, unless domestic violence or abuse was involved, I actually worked with both of them. We would alternate back and forth. His session, her session, then their session. No, I'm not the only person who's ever done that. It's a completely viable model for doing couples therapy, one that many counselors use, but it's relatively uncommon. The bottom line here is to be really careful about where you're getting your advice. Who's giving you that direction? Make sure that person actually knows what they're talking about from a broader perspective than just one couple, that they know how to paint a picture of a healthy relationship. They actually know your spouse and they can put the whole picture together. If you'd like to learn more about counseling models, the counseling process, and how you can speed up your results, check out my free masterclass, A Wise Woman's Guide to Couples Counseling. I'll put the link in the description below and look forward to hearing from you there.